Chosen one, your identity reveal just shook the internet and their minds. Something about you has changed so deeply that people can no longer look at you the way they once did. The version of you they thought they understood was only the surface. Behind the silence, behind the setbacks, behind every moment when you felt unseen, there was something greater being formed. And now, that hidden truth is beginning to emerge. People are noticing your presence, your transformation, your unusual strength, and they are asking questions they never expected to ask. What they are witnessing is not coincidence. It is the unveiling of someone who was never ordinary. Chosen one, there are moments in life when your identity is not discovered by you alone, but revealed through everything you have survived. You did not need to announce who you were. Your journey announced it for you. Every obstacle became evidence. Every rejection became a clue. Every season of isolation became part of the revelation. There were people who looked at your quietness and assumed you had nothing to say. They mistook your silence for weakness. They thought because you were not constantly explaining yourself, you had nothing significant happening inside you. But they never understood that some transformations happen away from the crowd. While they were watching appearances, you were developing substance. While they were discussing your past, you were preparing for your future. While they were trying to define you by what had happened to you, you were becoming someone who could no longer be defined by what happened yesterday. And now the shift is becoming impossible to ignore. Your identity is showing through your decisions. It is showing through the way you no longer chase people who once made you feel unwanted. It is showing through the way you can walk away from environments that require you to become smaller just to belong. It is showing through the way your mind has become clearer, your standards have become stronger, and your tolerance for confusion has become almost non-existent. That is what shook them. They were comfortable with the old version of you. They understood the version who questioned everything. They understood the version who needed approval. They understood the version who kept returning to places that had already proven they could not honor your value. But they do not understand this version. This version has boundaries. This version listens more carefully. This version observes before responding. This version does not need to prove every accusation wrong. This version knows that sometimes the greatest response is simply becoming unavailable for the chaos. And chosen one, when you change internally, people who benefited from your old identity often feel the change before you even explain it. They may not know what happened, but they know something happened. They can feel that you are no longer operating from the same emotional place. They can feel that their old methods do not work anymore. The manipulation that once confused you now looks obvious. The disrespect that once made you overthink now makes you step back. The attention that once felt valuable now feels empty when it comes without genuine respect. Your identity reveal is not necessarily about becoming famous. It is about becoming undeniable to yourself. That is the part nobody expected. For so long, you may have searched outside yourself for confirmation. You wanted someone to tell you that you were capable. You wanted someone to recognize your potential. You wanted someone to acknowledge the pain you had endured and say, you were never crazy for believing there was more. But eventually, something changed. You stopped waiting for permission, and that is when your life started moving differently. Chosen one, there is a strange power that appears when you finally stop negotiating with the person you know you are becoming. You stop asking whether everyone will understand. You stop adjusting your dreams according to someone else's insecurity. You stop treating your destiny like a group decision. Not everyone is supposed to understand your path. Some people only understand what they have personally experienced. If they have never had to rebuild themselves, they may not understand why you protect your peace. If they have never experienced deep transformation, they may interpret your growth as arrogance. If they have never walked through uncertainty while holding on to hope, they may think your confidence came easily. They did not see the nights. They did not see the internal battles. They did not see how many times you almost gave up. They did not see the moments when you had to encourage yourself because nobody else knew how much you were carrying. They saw the emergence. They did not see the preparation, and now they are looking at the result and wondering where this person came from. But chosen one, you did not suddenly become this person. You became this person slowly. You became this person every time you chose discipline over distraction. You became this person every time you decided not to return to what had already broken your peace. You became this person every time you kept moving despite not knowing exactly where the road would lead. You became this person every time you refused to let disappointment become your identity. That is why your reveal feels so shocking to people. They thought they knew your story because they knew one chapter. They judged the entire book from a page where you were struggling. They saw you when you were rebuilding and assumed you would remain there forever. They saw the storm and thought the storm was your destination. But storms move. Seasons change. People evolve. And sometimes the person who was underestimated becomes the person everyone suddenly wants to understand. You may notice people from your past appearing again. Some will be curious. Some will be impressed. Some will act as though they always believed in you. And some may quietly wonder whether they made the wrong decision when they walked away. But do not allow their reaction to become the source of your confidence. Your identity cannot depend on who finally recognizes it. Because if you need the crowd to confirm who you are, the crowd can also make you question who you are. You have to know. You have to know when nobody applauds. You have to know when nobody understands. You have to know when the numbers are low, the doors are closed, the opportunities are delayed, and the evidence seems invisible. That is where identity becomes real. Anybody can feel powerful when everything is working. But what do you believe about yourself when nothing seems to be moving? What do you believe about yourself when the world is quiet? What do you believe about yourself when the people you expected to support you disappear? That is where your true identity begins to reveal itself. And chosen one, perhaps that is why your isolation was so uncomfortable. You were forced to meet yourself without the noise, without constant opinions, without endless distractions, without people telling you what you should become. In that silence, you discovered things about yourself that the crowd could never teach you. You discovered that you could survive disappointment. You discovered that you could start again. You discovered that loneliness did not have to mean abandonment. You discovered that being misunderstood did not mean being wrong. And most importantly, you discovered that you were capable of becoming your own source of stability. Now, the internet may react, people may talk, people may speculate, people may create stories around your transformation because they cannot understand the process behind it. But let them wonder. You do not owe everyone access to your private transformation. You do not have to reveal every battle just because people want an explanation for your strength. Some victories are supposed to remain sacred. Some lessons are too personal to become public entertainment. Some parts of your journey belong only to you. And that is another reason your identity reveal is shaking minds. You are no longer desperate to be understood by everyone. You have realized that being understood by the right people is more valuable than being explained to the wrong ones. There is a difference between being visible and being known. Millions can see you and still not know you. One person can sit beside you in silence and understand exactly what you have survived. So do not confuse attention with connection. Do not confuse followers with community. Do not confuse admiration with love. And do not confuse people being fascinated by your transformation with people being qualified to participate in it. Your new identity requires new standards, new environments, new conversations, new priorities. Because you cannot carry an old mindset into a new chapter and expect a different experience. Something has to change, and maybe that change has already begun. Maybe you are becoming more selective with your time. Maybe you are protecting your energy. Maybe you are finally taking your own dreams seriously. Maybe you have stopped announcing every move because you have learned that quiet progress is often stronger than public promises. Keep going. Let the results speak when the time is right. You do not need to convince people that you are changing change. You do not need to convince people that you are capable. Build. You do not need to convince people that you have a purpose. Live it, because the most powerful identity reveal is not a speech. It is a life that no longer resembles the limitations people placed upon you. And chosen one. There will come a moment when the people who underestimated you realize that they were not watching you lose. They were watching you prepare. They misunderstood the silence. They misunderstood the delay. They misunderstood the distance. They misunderstood the rebuilding. They thought nothing was happening because nothing was visible. But beneath the surface, everything was changing. Roots grow in darkness. Foundations are built before buildings rise. And sometimes the most important chapter of your life begins when nobody is watching. That is why you should not be ashamed of the hidden season. Do not despise the years when nobody noticed. Do not resent the days when your name was not mentioned. Do not wish away the moments when you had to walk alone. Those seasons may have given you something attention never could: depth. They taught you how to move without applause. They taught you how to continue without guarantees. They taught you how to recognize the difference between people who love your presence and people who only love what your presence provides. And now that you know the difference, you cannot unknow it. That is the revelation. Not that you suddenly became someone extraordinary, but that you finally recognized what was already being built inside you. And once you recognize it, you cannot comfortably return to the old version of yourself. You cannot pretend you do not see what you see now. You cannot unknow your value. You cannot willingly return to places where you had to beg to be respected. You cannot keep shrinking just because your growth makes someone else uncomfortable. Your identity is becoming visible through your refusal to betray yourself. And that refusal will cost you some relationships. It may cost you some invitations. It may cost you some familiar environments. But sometimes losing access to what was keeping you small is not a loss. Sometimes it is the beginning of freedom. So when they ask what happened to you, you do not need a complicated answer. You grew. You learned. You healed from what you could. You released what you could not carry. You became more honest with yourself, and you stopped confusing familiarity with destiny. That is enough. Because chosen one, the people who truly belong in your next chapter will not require you to become your former self just to make them comfortable. They will recognize the growth. They will respect the boundaries. They will celebrate the new discipline. They will not compete with your becoming. They will contribute to it. And as you move forward, remember this: your identity is not revealed by what people say about you. It is revealed by what you repeatedly choose when nobody is watching. Choose courage. Choose integrity. Choose patience. Choose discipline. Choose wisdom over reaction. Choose purpose over temporary approval. Because the internet can talk about you for a day, a week, or a month. People can speculate about your transformation. They can create theories about where you came from and where you are going. But eventually, conversation fades. What remains is your life, your choices, your character, your work, your impact. And that is where the real revelation continues. Chosen one, there is still another layer to this revelation that you need to understand. Because what is happening around you is not simply about people noticing that you have changed. It is about the realization that the person they thought they had figured out was never the complete version of you. They saw fragments. They saw moments. They saw circumstances. They saw mistakes. They saw seasons when you were struggling to find your direction. But they never saw the entire picture. And sometimes people become confident in their judgment of you because they witnessed you during a difficult chapter. They saw you exhausted and called you weak. They saw you uncertain and called you lost. They saw you struggling financially, emotionally, professionally, or personally, and decided that your circumstances represented your permanent identity. They saw you fall and assumed you would never stand again. But what they failed to understand is that falling is not the same thing as finishing. You can fall and still rise. You can lose something and still gain wisdom. You can experience rejection and still discover your direction. You can walk through a season where nothing makes sense and still emerge with a level of clarity that could never have been produced by comfort. That is what has been happening inside you. Your difficult seasons were not empty. They were teaching you. Every disappointment was forcing you to examine what you truly wanted. Every closed door was making you question whether you were chasing something because it was genuinely meant for you or because you wanted approval. Every person who walked away was teaching you something about attachment, expectations, boundaries, and self-respect. And now you are beginning to understand why certain things had to change. You used to ask, why did this happen to me? Now you are beginning to ask, what was this trying to teach me? That is a completely different mindset. One question keeps you trapped in the event. The other turns the event into wisdom. Chosen one, that shift in your thinking is one of the biggest signs that your identity is evolving. You are no longer only reacting to life. You are studying it. You are observing patterns. You are paying attention to what drains you and what strengthens you. You are noticing who celebrates you when you are doing well, and who becomes distant when you begin to grow. You are noticing who supports your dreams and who only supports you when your dreams remain smaller than theirs. You are noticing who listens to understand and who listens only to respond. You are noticing who respects your boundaries and who becomes angry when they can no longer cross them. And once you begin noticing these things, you cannot go back to being unaware. Your eyes have opened. That is why some conversations no longer satisfy you. That is why certain environments feel different. That is why you can sit in a room you once desperately wanted to enter and suddenly realize you do not even want to stay there. Your standards changed. Your vision changed. Your understanding changed. And when your understanding changes, your entire world begins to look different. Chosen one, this is where people may become confused. They may say, you have changed. And you can simply say, yes, because you were supposed to. You were never meant to remain exactly the same person you were 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or even 6 months ago. Growth requires change. Healing requires change. Maturity requires change. Wisdom requires change. You cannot ask for a different life while insisting on remaining the same person who created your old patterns. Something has to evolve, and that something is you. Not because there was something wrong with you before, but because every chapter requires a different version of your strength. The version of you who survived the beginning may not be the version of you who can handle the next level. The version who learned to endure must now learn to build. The version who learned to protect themselves must now learn when it is safe to trust. The version who learned to say no must now learn what deserves a yes. The version who spent years recovering must eventually learn how to live again without constantly expecting another disaster. That is another part of your identity reveal. You are not only becoming stronger, you are becoming more balanced. You are learning that strength is not always hardness. Sometimes strength is softness without weakness. Sometimes strength is walking away without hatred. Sometimes strength is forgiving without reopening the door. Sometimes strength is admitting you were wrong without destroying your self-worth. Sometimes strength is asking for help. Sometimes strength is resting. Sometimes strength is refusing to participate in a battle that was designed to distract you, and people who only understand one definition of strength will not understand yours. They may think your silence means surrender. They may think your calmness means you do not care. They may think your patience means you are easy to manipulate, but they will eventually discover that peace and weakness are not the same thing. A peaceful person can still have boundaries. A quiet person can still have power. A forgiving person can still walk away. A compassionate person can still say no. And a chosen one can learn to protect their future without becoming consumed by the behavior of others. This is important because there may be people watching you right now, waiting for you to react. They remember the old version. They remember how easily you could be provoked. They remember what buttons to push. They remember the subjects that used to make you emotional. They remember the things that used to make you chase explanations. But now they are pressing those same buttons and discovering something unexpected. Nothing happens. You do not react the way they expected. You do not argue for hours. You do not send the paragraph you once would have sent. You do not desperately demand to be understood. You simply observe. And sometimes your silence becomes the loudest answer. Not because you are trying to punish anyone, but because you finally understand that not every situation deserves your energy. That realization is powerful. Your attention is one of your greatest resources. Where your attention goes, your emotional energy follows. Where your emotional energy goes, your actions follow. And where your actions repeatedly go, your life begins to take shape. So you are becoming careful about what receives your attention. You are asking yourself different questions now. Does this deserve my energy? Does this relationship support who I am becoming? Does this opportunity align with what I actually want? Does this conversation move me forward or pull me backward? Does this person respect my peace? Does this environment encourage growth? These questions may seem simple, but they can completely transform your life. Because once you stop giving everything equal access to you, you begin to discover how much energy you were wasting. You were explaining yourself to people who had already decided to misunderstand you. You were defending yourself against accusations that did not deserve a response. You were trying to convince people of your worth who benefited from pretending not to see it. You were carrying expectations that did not belong to you. And now you are putting some of that weight down. That is why you feel different. That is why your presence feels different. That is why people who knew you before may look at you and wonder what happened. You stopped carrying everything? Chosen one, understand something else. Your identity is not determined by the people who left. Their departure does not automatically mean you were rejected by life. Sometimes people leave because the relationship has reached the limit of what it can teach you. Sometimes a connection ends because the people involved are moving in different directions. Sometimes you outgrow a dynamic without anyone being evil. Sometimes you simply become incompatible with a version of life that no longer fits you, and that is okay. Not every ending needs a villain. Not every goodbye needs revenge. Not every closed door needs to be reopened. Some doors close because your attention belongs somewhere else. You have spent enough time looking backward. There is something ahead of you that requires your full attention. And the more you turn toward it, the less interesting the past becomes. That is another sign. When you are truly moving forward, you stop needing the past to validate the future. You no longer need the person who rejected you to come back. You no longer need the person who doubted you to apologize. You no longer need the person who underestimated you to suddenly become your biggest supporter. Would it feel good? Maybe, but it is no longer necessary. That is freedom. When someone else's recognition becomes optional, you become difficult to control. And that is precisely why some people may react strangely to your growth. They were comfortable when your confidence depended on their approval. Now it does not. They were comfortable when you needed their attention. Now you can walk away. They were comfortable when you constantly explained yourself. Now you know who you are. They were comfortable when you questioned your decisions. Now you trust yourself more. This does not mean you never make mistakes. You will. You are human. But you no longer interpret every mistake as evidence that you are incapable. You learn, you adjust, you continue. That is maturity. Chosen one, your identity reveal is also about the relationship you are building with your own future. There is a version of you ahead that you have not met yet. A version with more experience, more wisdom, more confidence, more discipline, more understanding, more responsibility. And you are building that person through what you do today. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen that identity. Every time you choose discipline when motivation disappears, you strengthen it. Every time you refuse to return to a destructive pattern, you strengthen it. Every time you choose long-term growth over temporary comfort, you strengthen it. Your future self is being created through ordinary decisions that nobody online will ever see. That is why you should stop obsessing over dramatic signs and start respecting small, consistent actions. Your life can change through seemingly insignificant choices. One conversation, one decision, one boundary, one application, one business idea, 1 hour focused work, one difficult apology, one courageous beginning, one decision to stop procrastinating, one decision to stop accepting less than you know you can become. The world often celebrates the final result, but the identity is built in the invisible repetitions. Nobody sees the 100th time you choose discipline. They only see what discipline eventually produces. Nobody sees the 100th time you choose patience. They only see the calm person you become. Nobody sees the 100th time you choose to keep learning. They only see your expertise later. Nobody sees the hundreds of moments when you could have quit. They only see the moment when you finally succeed. So do not measure your progress only by what is visible. Some of the greatest changes are invisible at first. Your thinking may change before your circumstances. Your confidence may change before your opportunities. Your discipline may change before your results. Your standards may change before your relationships. And that is normal. The internal foundation often comes before the external evidence. This is why you must not panic during the transition. You may feel like you are between identities. The old version of you is no longer comfortable. But the new version is not fully established yet. That middle space can feel strange. You may not recognize yourself. You may question decisions you once felt certain about. You may find yourself craving different environments. You may suddenly become less interested in things that used to consume your attention. Do not automatically interpret this discomfort as failure. Sometimes discomfort is simply evidence that you are stretching beyond what is familiar. A seed does not look like a tree while it is becoming one. A foundation does not look like a finished building. A beginning rarely resembles the final result. So give yourself permission to be unfinished. You do not need to have every answer right now. You need enough clarity to take the next honest step, then another, then another. That is how the path reveals itself. Chosen one, there is also something you need to stop doing. Stop comparing your chapter to someone else's highlight. You do not know their full story. You see the announcement. You do not see the anxiety. You see the success. You do not see the years of preparation. You see the beautiful result. You do not see the sacrifices. You see the confidence. You do not see the uncertainty they had to overcome. Comparison steals your attention from your own assignment. Your journey has its own timing. Your life has its own lessons. Your opportunities may arrive differently. Your progress may be quieter. Your breakthrough may come through a door you never expected. So stop trying to force your life to resemble someone else's. Your identity was never supposed to be a copy. There is a reason your path has been different. And even if you cannot understand every part of it yet, you can still move forward with wisdom. You do not need to know the entire map to take the next step. You need courage for the road directly in front of you. And chosen one, perhaps that is what people are beginning to sense. Not perfection, not superiority, not invincibility, but direction. There is something different about a person who finally knows where they are going, even if they have not arrived yet. That person carries themselves differently. They speak differently. They choose differently. They stop begging for directions from people who have never walked the road, and they become willing to learn from experience instead of needing every decision approved by the crowd. That is where your power grows. You are becoming internally directed. You can still listen. You can still receive advice. You can still admit when you do not know, but you no longer surrender your judgment to every opinion. That distinction matters, because if you let everyone else define you, your identity becomes a collection of other people's expectations. One person says you are too ambitious. Another says you are not ambitious enough. One says you move too slowly. Another says you move too fast. One says you should stay. Another says you should leave. One says you should take the opportunity. Another says it is too risky. If you live entirely by these voices, you will never hear your own clearly. So learn to become quiet enough to think. Learn to pause before responding. Learn to separate advice from pressure. Learn to recognize when someone's fear is being presented as wisdom. Not every warning is wrong. Not every criticism is jealousy. Not every compliment is genuine. Discernment means you stop accepting everything at face value. You examine. You observe. You consider. You decide, and once you decide, you move. That is the identity people cannot easily manipulate. The person who thinks before reacting. The person who knows their values. The person who can admit mistakes. The person who can change direction without believing they have failed. The person who can walk away without needing to destroy what they left behind. The person who can succeed without becoming arrogant. The person who can struggle without becoming bitter. That is the identity being revealed. And perhaps the internet is only a metaphor for something even bigger. The internet can represent the entire world of opinions surrounding you. Everyone has something to say. Everyone has a prediction. Everyone has a label. Everyone has an explanation. But none of them have to live your life. You do. You are the one who wakes up with your choices. You are the one who carries the consequences. You are the one who knows what you have survived. You are the one who understands what you had to overcome. So your responsibility is not to satisfy every observer. Your responsibility is to become someone you can respect when you are alone. That is the standard. Not applause, not popularity, not constant validation. Respect yourself enough to keep your word. Respect yourself enough to protect your time. Respect yourself enough to leave what repeatedly harms your peace. Respect yourself enough to pursue what matters. Respect yourself enough to keep learning. Respect yourself enough to admit when you need to grow. Because the strongest identity is not built through ego. It is built through character. And character is revealed when nobody is watching. It is revealed when you have power and choose restraint. It is revealed when you have an opportunity to retaliate and choose wisdom. It is revealed when you could take credit but choose honesty. It is revealed when nobody would know if you cheated, yet you choose integrity anyway. Those are the moments that define you, not the viral moment, not the public reveal, not the comments, not the attention, the quiet decisions, the private choices, the moments when you could become someone you would later regret becoming, but instead you choose the harder road. That is where your identity becomes permanent. And chosen one, as you continue forward, there may be another wave of recognition coming from places you never expected. People may begin connecting pieces of your story. They may start understanding why you made certain decisions. They may realize that what looked like withdrawal was actually preparation. That what looked like failure was actually redirection. That what looked like silence was actually discipline. And that what looked like an ending was creating space for something they could not see yet. Chosen one, now you understand why you had to become comfortable with being misunderstood. Your greatest transformation was never going to happen while you were desperately trying to convince everyone of your intentions. It happened when you finally became more committed to your purpose than to people's opinions. There may be people who still remember the old you. Let them remember. There may be people who still believe you are the person you used to be. Let them believe it. You do not have to chase every misunderstanding and correct every narrative. Your life will eventually speak with a clarity that arguments never could. The most powerful thing you can do now is continue. Continue building. Continue learning. Continue protecting your peace. Continue becoming disciplined. Continue choosing wisdom when emotion wants to take control. Continue walking toward the life that feels honest to who you are becoming. Because your identity is not revealed in one dramatic moment. It is revealed repeatedly through the choices you make after the moment passes. And when the attention fades, when the comments disappear, when the curiosity of others moves toward something else, you will still be standing there with your future in front of you. That is what matters. Do not become addicted to being recognized. Become committed to being real. Do not spend your life proving that the people who doubted you were wrong. Spend your life becoming everything they could not imagine. There is a difference. One is motivated by revenge. The other is motivated by purpose. Choose purpose. Your story does not need to end with someone regretting losing you. Your story can become something much greater than that. It can become about you finally finding yourself. And perhaps that is the deepest part of this entire revelation. You were searching for your identity in other people's reactions when it was waiting inside your own decisions. You were waiting for someone to tell you who you were when life was already giving you evidence. You survived what was supposed to break you. You learned from what was supposed to destroy your confidence. You continued when stopping would have been easier. You rebuilt when nobody was watching. You kept believing in possibility, even when the evidence was incomplete. That is who you are, not because someone declared it, because your actions proved it. So chosen one, walk forward without needing the whole world to understand. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them question. Let them watch. Your responsibility is not to manage their perception. Your responsibility is to manage your direction. And when you finally look back one day, you may realize that the identity reveal everyone was talking about was never really about shocking them. It was about awakening you. It was about helping you see that you were capable of more than you once believed. It was about realizing that your past could explain you without controlling you. It was about understanding that rejection could redirect you, failure could educate you, isolation could strengthen you, and uncertainty could teach you to trust yourself. So keep going, keep becoming, keep choosing the person you know you are capable of being. Because the world may eventually recognize what you have been building, but the greatest victory will be much quieter. It will be the moment you wake up and realize you no longer need anyone else to confirm your identity. You know who you are. You know what you have survived. You know what you are building. You know what you refuse to return to. And you know that the chapter ahead deserves more of your attention than the chapter behind you. Chosen one, this is not the end of your story. This is the moment you stop asking the world who you are and begin living as the answer. Walk forward. Stand firmly. Protect your peace. Honor your growth. And let your life become the revelation that no explanation could ever fully describe.